WZAB Sweetwater, South Florida's only business radio station.
That's it. Turn it around.
It's Down to Business with Jack Miller. Forget what they teach you in school. This is real life. Not Wall Street, but Main Street. A real show on what's really involved with starting and running a business. All the ups and downs. Our guests will answer your questions and provide you with valuable information. Stay tuned and join in the conversation. Call us at 305-541-2350. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at HJackMiller1.
Hey, hello everyone. This is Jack Miller. I really appreciate you joining us. I'm super excited about today's show. We have Todd Cohen with us, of course, the commercial corner man. And first I want to kind of set the preface. Usually, as you, our listeners, faithful listeners know, I tend to, and Todd and I tend to laugh a lot and be a little goofy and tell silly stories and rant and rave and hopefully give some people inspiration and motivation and some education about business. But today, it's a serious topic, and I contemplated for a while, do we do half of it our usual shtick and nonsense, or do we just really focus on the issue? And our guest is such an important figure, and the issue is so important that I really just want to focus on the guest and the issue. Today, we have on with us Sydney Powell, who happens to be an attorney, a stellar appellate attorney. She was formerly with the Department of Justice. She's recently written a book called License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. We're going to get Sydney on in a second, and I'm just very, very grateful for her to be on the show today, and I hope you'll indulge us, because this is an absolutely critical issue that that the country are faced with today. Some startling statistics, and I must tell you that I did not realize that we had an over-criminalization problem, or really a problem with I don't want to say with criminals, with the Department of Justice and the criminal system until a few years ago. And frankly, if you would have told me a few years ago about this book and a few others like this, I would have said impossible, it's fiction. Not in my country, not in the country that I love so much. This is just impossible. But unfortunately, I was naive, and this stuff is true. We're going to get into the details, the bowels of our criminal justice system. Sydney has done an unbelievable job of exposing some corruption and some things that have to be corrected. I don't want anyone to think that I'm unpatriotic or we're unpatriotic talking about this. We just need to adjust our system, because so many people are really suffering from it today. And look, I'm not soft on crime. If you're a criminal, you deserve to be taken off the streets. But there's a difference between a criminal and there's a difference between people getting put away or whose lives ruined over regulation within the government, or government just really railroading people. And that's what I want to talk about today. Just some statistics before we get Sydney on the phone. There's 2.2 million people behind bars today, about 1% of our population, and a large amount of them haven't even been gone to trial yet. They just don't have enough money to make bail. About 5.1 million people, 1 in 45 of us, are on probation. Here's the most startling number. 65 million people in America have records or have been involved with the criminal justice system. That's about 1 in 4. I have to tell you, I never realized this. And for those of you who are saying, oh, it doesn't affect me, it's not in my community, well, you're wrong, because this is in every community. We saw it in Baltimore, how the people are going nuts there, and I don't blame them. They should be. Not to the violent state, don't misunderstand me, but they're being oppressed, and people need to do something. But this is also critical in the white-collar community, and we need to address it. So with that, I want to bring on a hero, and I really, really mean this, Sydney Powell. Can we bring on Sydney? Hey, Sydney, you on with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Sydney, I told you this morning, and I just want to reiterate it, you are a hero for writing this book, and the courage and, frankly, I don't know, I'm not going to use the right word, just the courage it took to write this book is unbelievable. And you're doing a tremendous amount of good, and we need to spread the word. And you told me some things which we're going to talk about this morning, which I was just startled by. But maybe I should give everyone just a little bit of a description of the book and jump in anytime. I'm certainly not a professional interviewer at all, so what do I know? I just want to talk to you. The book, first of all, is written for anyone who wants to read it, and I would encourage everyone to read it. We're going to talk about that in a minute, where to get it. The book was written almost like a novel. I mean, it's written not like a legal journal, but it's riveting. I read it in a couple days. And it talks about the over-criminalization in America and pure corruption within the bowels of the government. And Sydney dealt with this firsthand with her dealing with Arthur Anderson, Enron, Ted Stevens, Merrill Lynch. She goes into all kinds of details in the book. So, Sydney, why don't you tell us first maybe a little bit of your background and what I don't want to say possessed you, but what gave you, why did you write the book, and what's the essence of the book?
I wrote the book because I care so much about this country and our criminal justice system, and I was absolutely appalled by what I witnessed throughout the last 10 years as I represented Arthur Anderson and one of the Merrill Lynch executives in the Enron litigation. I started my career with the incredible responsibility of being the youngest assistant United States attorney in the country at the time. I was a federal prosecutor in the Western District of Texas and the Northern District of Texas and the Eastern District of Virginia. So 3 districts across the country over a period of 10 years, and I worked under 9 or 10 different United States attorneys from both political parties. Not a single one of the United States attorneys that I ever worked for would have tolerated for 2 seconds the conduct and approach to the law that I saw by the corrupt cabal of Enron task force prosecutors that went after Arthur Anderson and destroyed that company and 85,000 jobs, and that targeted Merrill Lynch executives and targeted all kinds of people because of the collapse of Enron. That's not to say that there were not some people at Enron who committed crimes and should have gone to prison or been prosecuted, but they cast their nets far too wide, and it was all about bringing down this person or that company as opposed to seeking justice and prosecuting crimes. We have got to get to a place in this country where we don't prosecute people, we prosecute crimes, and we need to take the politics out of prosecutions.
You know, it seems to me that I suspect a lot of people, grew up on the faith in our justice system. And I remember hearing quotes like, rather 100 guilty go free than 1 innocent go to jail, and things like that. And it seems that the justice system today, and I'll call it the over-regulation and over-criminalization, has gotten so out of hand that I just don't know if people really are, or mainstream people are aware of it, unless they're unfortunately thrust into it and deal with it. And as well, they don't realize, I think, the repercussions of the awesome power of the government and it's the Department of Justice and the lawyers, that whether you're guilty or innocent today doesn't matter. It just destroys a life. And once you get on this system, it's like a runaway train. It's almost impossible to get off of.
It is. It's very, very serious. Judge Rakoff, a prominent judge in New York, has written an article that came out about a year ago about why innocent people plead guilty. And there are all kinds of innocent people in our prisons right now. Some pled guilty because they felt like they had absolutely no alternative. Prosecutors haul people in, offer them a plea to 1 count perhaps, and if they don't take that, then they stack 10, 15 charges against them, everything they can think of, even though it's based on the same single act or conduct. The pressure is absolutely enormous. They threaten to indict other family members. They bleed your resources. They basically bring the full weight and power and might of the federal government to bear on the individual, harass your friends, just make people's lives living hell for the sake of racking up convictions.
You know, I don't believe these are isolated incidents, and I think it's a combination of problems and systemic throughout the system and a combination of reasons. But what are your thoughts on that? Because, again, you talk about specific cases and incidents in the book, but how widespread is this amongst the justice system throughout the country?
I think it infects at least 20% of it. It's far too widespread. And the more high-profile the case and the more unusual the case, the more likely there is to be prosecutorial misconduct in it, it seems to me. Certainly in the things that have alleged to be business crimes, because, frankly, prosecutors have made up a lot of things alleging that they're crimes when they're not. I think the Department of Justice in D.C. sees that as a way of circumventing Congress. They get tired of Congress waiting to make a law, so they do it themselves by prosecuting, and it takes years to correct those injustices, meanwhile destroying people's lives and families and livelihood. It's just an outrage, and it made me so angry I had to write License to Lie. It's not something I wanted to do. It's something I simply had to do.
Hey, Sydney, this is Todd. So nice to meet you, and thank you for being with us today. I have a question. How much of this misconduct is a result of people looking to make a name for themselves or looking for power themselves, and how much do you think is actually systemic?
I think most of the misconduct is people looking for a name for themselves. Certainly the intentional misconduct is, and I would say it's at least 20% widespread systemic.
I'm going to do a sharp left turn here because I have the book right in front of me. And I told Sydney this morning when I spoke to her that when she first was gracious enough to say she'd come on, I wanted to order the book. So I had my son order it on Amazon Prime. 3 days later, we get an email saying it's sold out. And we went from bookstore to bookstore to bookstore, and we couldn't get it. I finally got it. But it was literally a chore. Sydney told me something this morning which is startling, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but my interpretation was that she believes, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, that the shortage of the book is a result of a government effort to suppress its sales. Sydney, is that correct?
I think that's correct. I absolutely do. For example, the New York Times refused to review the book, even though some noted people wanted to write a review of it. The New York Post was going to publish an article about it, but reached out to Department of Justice for comment, and all of a sudden pulled the article. Been no mention of it since. No way to get through to them. Amazon refuses to deal with me directly. I can only list on Amazon as a third-party vendor, so they'll reflect that the book is sold out when I've actually got 430 copies there in stock, paying Amazon to fulfill orders as of yesterday. And Barnes & Noble refuses to put it on the shelves. There were some there to begin with because I did some in-store promotion of it, so there were a few of them at assorted Barnes & Nobles, but they wouldn't order it and they won't deal with me directly, and I own all the stock. I paid to have the copies and the book published myself because it was so important to do it. And I'm just absolutely convinced that they're trying to kill it with silence.
You know, we're going to talk about more of that in a minute, but one of the issues, I think, is you courageously literally name, I'm going to say, dozens of names in the book. And I wonder how much of an effect that has on it. And these are some very powerful